Imagine trying to predict the future of global sports using a multi-million-dollar supercomputer. You're processing like millions of data points, only to have your entire model completely upended by, well, a tired airline gate agent who refused a pregnant woman a boarding pass 20 years ago.
Right, which sounds completely absurd.
Totally. But welcome to your custom deep dive. Today, we're taking a massive stack of notes and articles from the June 13th, 2026 edition of the Sunday Blender. And our mission today is to explore why the biggest paradigm shifts in our world, in technology, business, culture, almost never happen the way we actually plan them.
Yeah, we spend so much capital trying to engineer the future,
Yeah.
but as we comb through these sources, the tension between our obsession with control and the chaotic reality of how the future actually unfolds is just staggering.
It really is. And the editor of the Blender actually framed this perfectly in the source material. They wrote this incredibly nostalgic reflection on how we mark the passage of time through different eras of soccer.
Oh yeah, that piece was great.
Right. They talk about growing up in the 90s, watching Italian Serie A on a fuzzy TV screen, the Dutch trio at AC Milan, the Germans at Inter.
That was the absolute center of gravity for that specific generation of fans.
Exactly. But then they moved to Singapore for school, and suddenly it's the 2000s, and Manchester United is just this inescapable global force. Keane, Beckham, Scholes.
Right, the whole dynasty.
Yeah, and fast forward a decade, they're working a corporate job in Beijing, and a Liga takes over. It's the 2010s, Real Madrid versus Barcelona, the relentless Ronaldo versus Messi debate. But the editor was so busy working, they barely even watched.
Which is, that's what makes the ending of that piece so resonant. We find ourselves in the present day of the 2026 World Cup, and the editor is watching their 10-year-old son pull on a number 10 Messi jersey for the summer.
It's this beautiful circle of life moment, and that framing is really the perfect lens for what we are doing today. We are constantly trying to spot the next era, the next Messi, the next trillion-dollar tech shift. But human nature and random chance always step in to just rewrite the rules.
Exactly. And if you look at the current 2026 World Cup, you immediately see our absolute obsession with trying to predict what happens next. The sources highlight two violently different prediction models currently trying to pick the winner of the tournament.
Oh, this part was wild.
It really is. So first you have the Opta supercomputer. It ran 25,000 simulations, crunching player biometrics, historical stats, weather data, and it determined Spain is the favorite to win at exactly 16.1%.
The ultimate expression of artificial data-driven calculation.
Precisely. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you have Polymarket, which is a prediction market driven entirely by human financial bets.
Right, real money.
Yes, tens of thousands of people putting real cash on the line based on their gut feelings and hunches. And Polymarket also has Spain as the favorite, sitting right around 16%.
Wow.
Yeah, the cold, hard machine and the chaotic, emotional crowd arrive at the exact same statistical probability.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we crown the supercomputer as some sort of oracle, the sources show Opta's history is full of massive blind spots.
Oh, for sure.
Sure, they correctly guessed France in 2018, but their models completely failed to predict Brazil's historic 7-1 collapse in 2014.
Right, nobody saw that coming.
Exactly. And in 2022, they gave Argentina, the eventual champion, by the way, only a 5% chance of winning. Doesn't this suggest that when it comes to predicting paradigm shifts, millions of dollars of computing power is basically barely doing better than a coin flip?
It really suggests that our world is driven by variables that are simply too asymmetrical to model. The sources bring up a mathematical concept that explains this perfectly, the Pareto principle.
Right, the 80-20 rule.
Exactly. Alfredo Pareto was an Italian economist around 1900, and he noticed this massive imbalance in his country's wealth. Roughly 20% of the population owned 80% of the land in Italy.
Which, just sounds like standard economic inequality.
That's what he thought, too, until he started noticing the exact same 80-20 ratio in completely unrelated systems. He looked at his garden and found that 20% of his pea plants were producing 80% of the peas.
That is so bizarre.
Right. The Pareto principle shows us that outcomes are almost never distributed evenly. A tiny, often invisible input dictates the vast majority of the outcome.
Wow.
Like a single line of bad code crashes an entire software system. Or, in the case of predicting sports, a completely random life event fundamentally alters international competition.
Which brings me back to that airline gate agent from the start. We have the ultimate real-world example of a random 20% input changing the 80% outcome right here in the World Cup sources. Fuller and Balogun.
Oh, this story is incredible.
It's insane. The U.S. soccer star who just scored 2 goals in the U.S.'s 4-1 opening win against Paraguay. He's the first American to score twice in a World Cup match since 1930.
And what's incredible here is the total failure of modern scouting models to account for real life. Fuller's Nigerian parents lived in London. His mother was visiting family in New York late in her pregnancy.
Right.
And when she got to the airport to fly home, the airline staff told her she needed a doctor's note to fly, which she couldn't get in time. So Fullerin was born in Brooklyn.
But the family moves back to London a few weeks later. He grows up in the UK. He plays for England's youth national teams like 28 times. He was entirely a product of the English development system.
And yet, because of one cautious airline employee 2 decades ago, he had the dual citizenship required to switch to the U.S. team in 2023.
It's just wild. Global soccer federations spend tens of millions of dollars tracking players from the age of 8. But the United States gets a generational talent handed to them purely because of a missing doctor's note. You literally cannot code that into an algorithm.
You really can't. And that hubris, the idea that we can perfectly model the future if we just have enough data, it keeps failing us in real time. I mean, look at the NBA Finals from the sources.
Oh, man. Yeah.
The models heavily favored the San Antonio Spurs, led by their 22-year-old phenom Victor Wembanyama. But instead, the New York Knicks, a team without a championship in 53 years, are unexpectedly up 3-1.
Game 4 of that series is just a perfect study in the limits of probability. The Knicks were down by 29 points.
In a finals game.
Right. If you look at the win probability charts during that game, the Spurs had a 99.9% chance of winning. The math said the game was over.
Completely over.
But math doesn't account for desperation adrenaline or, Jalen Brunson deciding to score 36 points to orchestrate a 107-106 comeback. We try to compress human willpower into a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet just breaks.
It breaks every time.
But this blind spot, this illusion that the future is perfectly predictable, it doesn't stop at the basketball court, right? We see the exact same hubris in the boardroom. The corporate world is being completely upended by massive asymmetrical shifts. Case in point, the Fortune 500 list from the sources.
Oh, this is a huge milestone.
Massive. For 13 consecutive years, Walmart was the biggest company in America by revenue. But as of June 2026, Amazon has finally overtaken them, hitting $716.9 billion in revenue, edging past Walmart's $713.2 billion.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the mechanism of how Amazon won this decades-long battle is what's truly vital to understand.
Right.
Amazon didn't beat Walmart by simply selling more spatulas and books online than Walmart sold in physical stores. The tipping point was Amazon Web Services. AWS.
The cloud computing division.
Yes, but it's more than just cloud storage. AWS is the invisible plumbing of the internet. They rent out the infrastructure that other companies use to exist. Netflix, banking apps, government databases, they all run on AWS.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that utility model generates revenue and profit margins at a velocity that selling physical goods never could. Walmart stayed focused on the retail war Amazon won by owning the battlefield itself.
Okay, but even $716 billion feels almost quaint when you look at the next milestone in our sources. June 12th, 2026. SpaceX holds its initial public offer.
The big one.
Yeah. Shares jump 18% on day one, giving the company a valuation of nearly $2 trillion. And because Elon Musk holds about a 42% stake, his personal wealth crossed the $1 trillion mark. History's first trillionaire.
It's hard to even process that number. Now, to really grasp the gravity of it, the source material offers a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The human brain cannot comprehend a trillion. But think of it this way. If you spend $27,000 every single day, it would take you 100 years just to spend $1 billion.
That is deeply upsetting.
Right. And a trillion is 1,000 of those billions.
So what does this all mean? The sources note that Musk's stated goal is to put a self-sustaining city of 1 million people on Mars by 2050 using these massive Starship rockets. But he is notoriously late on almost every space deadline he sets. Are investors throwing trillions of dollars at actual tangible reality, or are they just funding an incredibly expensive science fiction novel?
Well, investors aren't paying for SpaceX's current spreadsheet or their track record of hitting deadlines. They are paying a massive premium for an insurance policy against the future.
Interesting.
Yeah, in a market terrified of being left behind by the next paradigm shift, valuing a company at $2 trillion is essentially a bet that whoever controls the infrastructure of space will control the next century of economics.
So they're betting on the ultimate 20% input. But as the sources show, you can't just force a paradigm shift into existence if people don't actually want it. We just saw this with Apple, right? The Apple Vision Pro.
Oh, a catastrophic miscalculation of human behavior.
Catastrophic is definitely the right word. Launched in 2024 for nearly $3,500, this headset was marketed as the absolute future of spatial computing.
It was supposed to seamlessly blend our digital lives with our physical spaces.
And humans completely rejected it. I mean, the numbers here are brutal. They only sold around 600,000 units. The return rate was incredibly high, and Apple quietly slashed the marketing budget by over 95%.
Which is practically unheard of for them.
Right. But the ultimate proof that the paradigm shift failed came from incoming 2026 CEO John Ternus. He completely killed the planned Vision Pro 2. He scrapped the cheaper Vision Air models. He took the engineers and moved them to work on lightweight smart glasses to compete with Meta.
It is a profound lesson in the limits of capital. Apple is arguably the most successful consumer electronics company in human history.
Huh.
But wearing a heavy, isolating computer on your face didn't solve a real human problem. It just created friction.
Exactly.
You cannot engineer a revolution if the physical mechanism fundamentally annoys the user.
And yet, while humans are loudly rejecting heavy headsets, there is this quiet revolution happening in the back end of our digital lives that is genuinely shocking. Cloudflare, the company that routes a huge portion of the world's internet traffic, reported in June 2026 that for the very first time, the majority of web traffic is no longer human.
Yes.
57.5% of all web requests are now coming from machines.
This is the rise of agentic AI.
Yeah.
And we aren't talking about simple scripts just refreshing a page.
Right. It's way more advanced.
Exactly. These are autonomous AI agents given a task by a human user, going out and browsing the web on their own to execute it.
The sources break this down perfectly. If a human is trying to buy a specific flight, they might check like 5 different websites, compare prices, and book. An AI agent given that same task will scour 5,000 websites in a matter of seconds, analyzing every possible permutation to find the absolute best route.
Which is brilliant for the end user, but an absolute nightmare for the architecture of the web. This tipping point happened a full year earlier than Cloudflare executives predicted.
The way I picture this is it's like a company building a massive, gorgeous luxury shopping mall. You spend millions on the lighting, the storefront displays, the ambient music, all designed to make human shoppers linger and spend money.
Right, the whole experience.
Exactly. But suddenly, almost 60% of the foot traffic in your beautiful mall is just thousands of robotic personal assistants sprinting at full speed, grabbing items off the shelves and leaving. They never look at your billboards. They don't buy food in the food court. They just consume your server bandwidth and leave.
That is a remarkably accurate way to visualize it. The infrastructure was built for human psychology, but it's being overrun by machine efficiency. And the danger is that this relentless pursuit of efficiency is bleeding directly into the physical world.
Oh, you're talking about the Tesla video from the sources.
I am. In early June, a viral video surfaces of a Tesla driving itself along a wet, incredibly narrow cliffside road in China. The curves are blind, the drop-off is lethal, and there are no human hands on the steering wheel.
Which is terrifying enough on its own.
But here's where it gets genuinely reckless. Tesla lacks sufficient local, real-world driving data for those specific Chinese roads.
So how did they train the system? They scraped ordinary dashcam videos off the internet.
Oh my God. Yes. They took chaotic, unregulated human internet data and used it to teach a 2-ton physical machine how to navigate a deadly cliffside, entirely without regulatory approval from the Chinese government.
They essentially used YouTube to teach a car how not to fall off a mountain. It feels like every boardroom in the world is obsessed with this terrifying speed. More scale, more data, more efficiency. But what I found so refreshing in the source material is that the art world, and even the natural world, are aggressively proving that bigger and faster isn't always reality.
Yeah, we are seeing a very deliberate retreat from the fallacy of infinite growth. The Pace Gallery situation is a perfect example of this.
Pace is one of the most prestigious art galleries on the planet. For years, their entire strategy was aggressive expansion. They even built a $100 million multi-story headquarters in New York. They were operating like a tech monopoly.
Right.
But in early June, their CEO, Mark Gullit, did something unheard of. He announced they are firing 50 staff members and dropping 50 of their 135 artists.
And his reasoning is what matters. He explicitly admitted that the massive corporate gallery model is completely broken and unfixable.
He realized that by trying to scale art the way Amazon scaled retail, They lost the actual value of the gallery. They're intentionally shrinking their roster down to around 80 artists so they can actually focus on deep human relationships again. They hit the absolute limit of corporate scaling.
Because art requires friction.
Mhm.
It requires time. Which brings a poignant resonance to the recent passing of the iconic British painter David Hockney at age 88.
Hockney is such a fascinating figure. He relocates from dreary Yorkshire to sunny Los Angeles in the 1960s, and he becomes entirely obsessed with painting swimming pools.
Right.
He wanted to capture water, which is a substance that literally never holds still. And the sources point to his 1967 masterpiece, A Bigger Splash. If you haven't seen it, it's this incredibly flat, calm painting of a pink house, a diving board, and this massive, jagged white splash of water where someone has just jumped in, but you don't see the diver.
It is a suspended moment in time.
Yeah.
But the contradiction in how he created it is what makes it a masterpiece.
Here's where it gets really interesting. A real splash of water lasts, 2 seconds, tops? But Hockney painted that splash deliberately, agonizingly slowly. He used tiny brushes, applying acrylic paint over the course of roughly 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, he was completely captivated by the contradiction of taking 14 days to capture an event that vanishes in an instant. And I read this, and I couldn't help but think about those AI agents we just talked about. In a world where a bot can scan 5,000 websites in a second, why does a human spending 2 weeks to paint 2 seconds of water feel so much more valuable to us?
Well, because humans are fundamentally drawn to effort and attention. A machine perfectly rendering a splash in a millisecond is just processing data. Hockney's painting is an act of obsession. We value the flawed, irrational human lens. We love things that defy pure logic. I mean, look at the natural phenomena captured in Moscow on June 1st.
Oh, the blue moon over the Zvapizhny Bridge. Photographers captured this stunning, massive full moon rising behind the bridge, and all the headlines call it a blue moon. But you look at the photos in the source material, and the moon is clearly glowing this warm, heavy orange.
Because our naming conventions are entirely divorced from physical reality. A blue moon has absolutely nothing to do with color. It's simply a glitch in our calendar system.
Right.
The lunar cycle is 29.5 days, which doesn't perfectly align with our months. So every few years, a single month gets 2 full moons. We arbitrarily decided to call the second one blue.
Even though an actual moon that looks blue is incredibly rare, it only happens when a volcano erupts or massive wildfires pump a very specific size of ash particle into the atmosphere to filter the light.
Exactly. We stubbornly cling to the name blue moon for an orange moon because it's a cultural tradition. We prefer our delightfully flawed human labels over sterile accuracy.
And that delightfully flawed, irrational human element is exactly what makes our history so deeply entertaining. You simply cannot talk about unpredictable variables in the world without looking at the incredibly weird things people do when you give them a new system.
Unintended consequences are the ultimate unpredictable shift.
Absolutely. There is a historical anecdote in the sources from June 13th, 1920 that perfectly illustrates this. This was the exact day the U.S. Post Office was forced to officially ban people from mailing their children.
Which is a sentence that sounds completely insane in 2026.
It's so absurd, but here is how it happened. In 1913, the Postal Service launched Parcel Post, allowing Americans to mail packages up to 50 pounds. Before that, you could only mail letters. Suddenly, people start testing the limits of the system.
Naturally.
Yeah, they mailed bricks, eggs, live snakes, bees. And inevitably, a few highly pragmatic, deeply irrational parents realized that postage was cheaper than a train ticket.
The logic is horrifyingly sound.
It is. An Ohio family literally mailed their baby a mile down the road to its grandmother. It cost them 15 cents in stamps, and they insured the baby for $50. It took 7 years for the Postmaster General to finally step in and clarify that a human child does not classify as a harmless live animal which does not require food or water.
It is a hilarious historical quirk, but it reveals a deep truth about human pragmatism and family dynamics, which actually connects to another piece of history from our sources regarding family, the upcoming Father's Day on June 21st.
Right, which was started in 1910 by Sonora Smart Dodd in Washington State to honor her single father. And I love the scientific angle the sources took on this. Researchers look at how a mother's love and a father's love often manifests in entirely different behaviors.
Yes.
Fathers consistently engage in a much higher rate of physical, risky play with their kids wrestling, throwing them in the air, piggyback rides.
And historically, society just brushed that off as dads goofing around.
Yeah.
But developmental psychologists now recognize that this roughhousing is a critical evolutionary mechanism.
It's basically a flight simulator for human emotion. It lets kids experience adrenaline, fear, and excitement in a completely crash-proof, safe environment with someone they trust. They learn how to regulate their nervous systems through physical play.
It is an invisible architecture of childhood development.
Yeah.
And that deeply ingrained human tribalism, the way we bond, the way we align ourselves with our families or our teams, is currently being weaponized on a massive corporate scale at the World Cup.
Oh, the jersey sponsorships. It's not just 11 guys from one country playing 11 guys from another. It is a multi-billion-dollar proxy war playing out on their chests. You have Adidas and Nike dominating the legacy teams. But the most fascinating corporate maneuver here is Puma.
They're the wild card of the tournament.
For sure. Puma supplies 11 teams, mostly leaning heavily into the African nations like Senegal, Morocco, and Ghana. Puma has been a struggling German brand for years, but the insight here is that in early 2026, China's Anta Sports quietly bought a 29% stake in Puma.
This fundamentally shifts the landscape of global sports apparel. Anta isn't just buying stock. They're buying cultural legitimacy.
Right.
They are using a legacy German brand to backdoor their way into outfitting African and European national teams. It is a brilliant strategy to capture global market share without triggering the geopolitical resistance that a direct Chinese branding might face.
They're leveraging raw, unfiltered national pride for corporate expansion. Because as the sources point out, sports fans are wonderfully, predictably irrational. I have to read some of the quotes capturing the 2026 World Cup mood from the source material.
Oh, please do.
Okay, so one writer points out that the absolute most impressive thing about American fans is their muscle memory. They call the sport soccer for 4 straight years, then flawlessly flip their vocabulary to football for exactly 4 weeks, and then flip right back.
It's a psychological costume change.
Then there is the sheer agony of the time zones. One person wrote, "The only people awake at 4 a.m. during the World Cup are fans and people who made terrible decisions. We are one and the same."
The shared misery of sleep deprivation builds community.
It really does. And my favorite eternal truths from the piece? Every World Cup, there's one country nobody predicted going far and one country that disappoints everyone. The second one is always England. And lastly, Brazil loses one match and the entire country treats it as a humanitarian crisis. Respect the passion.
This right here, this intense, localized, highly emotional passion, is the exact variable that Optus supercomputers will never be able to fully synthesize.
So, to bring it all home today, we started with a multi-million-dollar supercomputer trying to model the future of sports, and Elon Musk leveraging a $2 trillion valuation to engineer a city on Mars. We watched autonomous AI agents take over 57.5% of the internet, breaking the old models of corporate scale.
Yeah, a lot of ground covered.
Definitely. But underneath all of that machinery, the world is still being driven by chaotic human inputs. A 15-cent stamp on a mailed baby in Ohio, a delayed flight causing a U.S. soccer star to be born in Brooklyn, and the irrational muscle memory of sports fans ruining their sleep schedules for a game.
Which leaves us with a profound paradox to consider. We're entering an era where an AI agent can process 5,000 websites in the time it takes you to blink. As machines completely master the domains of efficiency, optimization, and prediction, perhaps our greatest remaining human asset is our inefficiency.
Wow, yeah.
Will the ultimate luxury of the future simply be the willingness to do exactly what David Hockney did, spending weeks obsessing over a 2-second splash of water that a machine would simply ignore?
The luxury of inefficiency. I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you take that thought with you today. Keep exploring, keep looking for those tiny 80-20 tipping points in your own life, and remember that no matter how much data the supercomputers crunch, the future is still unwritten. Just like that 10-year-old kid pulling on his Messi jersey, the next era is out there waiting to surprise us. Until next time.